Business Environment 70 Business Studies. This is the truism that Dharamveer Singh Kamboj has always lived by and was able to somehow convince him and obtain a funding of $25,000 for his project. He began work immediately. The first prototype of his machine was ready in March 2005. An unexpected problem of overheating, however, cropped up. Even after Dharamveer's constant trials for the elimination of this problem, the issue still persisted in the second prototype. But the thought of giving up never crossed Dharamveer's mind. In his third prototype, he had successfully solved the problem of overheating at last. This prototype was bought by Jian North and sent to Kenya on a pilot basis. Based on the feedback, Jian asked him to modify it further, incorporating provisions that would make it portable, including the incorporation of foldable legs. In the fourth machine, he also incorporated a sieve to manage the flow of juice from the machine during the extraction process. The machine that Dharamveer developed is unique in a way that it has the capacity to process a wide variety of products without damaging the seed of the fruit or vegetable. The above example shows how a machine invented by Dharamveer Kamboj made life easier for women workers in an unorganized sector. This innovation resulted in a positive impact on food processing business, i.e., social, economic and technological, in addition to enhancing quality of life. Meaning of business environment. The term business environment means the sum total of all individuals, institutions and other forces that are outside the control of a business enterprise but that may affect its performance. As one writer has put it, just take the universe, subtract from it the subset that represents the organization, and the remainder is environment. Thus, the economic, social, political, technological and other forces which operate outside a business enterprise are part of its environment. So also, the individual consumers or competing enterprises as well as the governments, consumer groups, competitors, courts, media and other institutions working outside an enterprise constitute its environment. The important point is that these individuals, institutions and forces are likely to influence the performance of a business enterprise although they happen to exist outside its boundaries. For example, changes in government's economic. Source: the National Innovation Foundation, NIF, India, NIF. Org. In 2022-23 Business Environment 71. Policies, rapid technological developments, political uncertainty, changes in fashions and tastes of consumers and increased competition in the market all influence the working of a business enterprise in important ways. Increase in taxes by government can make things expensive to buy. Technological improvements may render existing products obsolete. Political uncertainty may create fear in the minds of investors. Changes in fashions and tastes of consumers may shift demand in the market from existing products to new ones. Increased competition in the market may reduce profit margins of firms. On the basis of the foregoing discussion, it can be said business environment has the following features: I. Totality of external forces. Business environment is the sum total of all things external to business firms and, as such, is aggregative in nature. E. Specific and general forces. Business environment includes both specific and general forces. Specific forces such as investors, customers, competitors and suppliers affect individual enterprises directly and immediately in their day-to-day working. General forces such as social, political, legal and technological conditions have impact on all business enterprises and thus may affect an individual firm only indirectly. E. Interrelatedness. Different elements or parts of business environment are closely interrelated. For example, increased life expectancy of people and increased awareness for healthcare have increased the demand for many health products and services like soft drinks, fat-free cooking oil, and health resorts. New health products and services have, in turn, changed people's lifestyles. IV. Dynamic nature. Business environment is dynamic in that it keeps on changing, whether in terms of technological improvement, shifts in consumer preferences or entry of new competition in the market. V. Uncertainty. Business environment is largely uncertain as it is very difficult to predict future happenings, especially when environment changes are taking place too frequently as in the case of information technology or fashion industries. VI. Complexity. Since business environment consists of numerous interrelated and dynamic conditions or forces which arise from different sources, it becomes difficult to comprehend at once what exactly constitutes a given environment. In other words, environment is a complex phenomenon that is relatively easier to understand in parts but difficult to grasp in its 2022-23-72 Business Studies totality. For example, it may be difficult to know the extent of the relative impact of the social, economic, political, technological or legal factors on change in demand of a product in the market. Weak relativity. Business environment is a relative concept since it differs from country to country and even region to region. Political conditions in the USA, for instance, differ from those in China or Pakistan. Similarly, demand for saris may be fairly high in India whereas it may be almost non-existent in France. Importance of business environment. Just like human beings, business enterprises do not exist in isolation. Each business firm is not an island unto itself. It exists, survives and grows within the context of the element and forces of its environment. While an individual firm is able to do little to change or control these forces, it has no alternative to responding or adapting according to them. A good understanding of environment by business managers enables them not only to identify and evaluate, but also to react to the forces external to their firms. The importance of business environment and its understanding by managers can be appreciated if we consider the following facts. It enables the firm to identify opportunities in getting the first mover advantage. Opportunities refer to the positive external trends or changes that will help a firm to improve its performance. Environment provides numerous opportunities for business success. Early identification of opportunities helps an enterprise to be the first to exploit them instead of losing them to competitors. For example, Maruti Udyog became the leader in the small car market because it was the first to recognize the need for small cars in an environment of rising petroleum prices and a large middle-class population in India. It helps the firm to identify threats and early warning signals. Threats refer to the external environment trends and changes that will hinder a firm's performance. Besides opportunities, environment happens to be the source of many threats. Environmental awareness can help managers to identify various threats on time and serve as an early warning signal. For example, if an Indian firm finds that a foreign multinational is entering the Indian market with new substitutes, it should act as a warning signal. On the basis of this information, the Indian firms can prepare themselves to meet the threat by adopting such 2022-23 Business Environment 73 measures as improving the quality of the product, reducing cost of the production, engaging in aggressive advertising, and so on. It helps in tapping useful resources. Environment is a source of various resources for running a business. To engage in any type of activity, a business enterprise assembles various resources called inputs like finance, machines, raw materials, power and water, labor, etc. From its environment including financiers, government and suppliers. They decide to provide these resources with their own expectations to get something in return from the enterprise. The business enterprise supplies the environment with its outputs such as goods and services for customers, payment of taxes to government, return on financial investment to investors and so on. Because the enterprise depends on the environment as a source of inputs or resources and is an outlet for outputs, it only makes sense that the enterprise designs policies that allow it to get the resources that it needs so that it can convert those resources into outputs that the environment desires. This can be done better by understanding what the environment has to offer. It helps in coping with rapid changes. Today's business environment is getting increasingly dynamic where changes are taking place at a fast pace. It is not the fact of change itself that is so important as the pace of change. Turbulent market conditions, less brand loyalty, divisions and subdivisions, fragmentation of markets, more demanding customers, rapid changes in technology and intense global competition are just a few of the images used to describe today's business environment. All sizes and all types of enterprises are facing increasingly dynamic environment. In order to effectively cope with these significant changes, managers must understand and examine the environment and develop suitable courses of action. It helps in assisting in planning and policy formulation. Since environment is a source of both opportunities and threats for a business enterprise, its understanding and analysis can be the basis for deciding the future course of action, planning, or training guidelines for decision-making policy. For instance, entry of new players in the market, which means more competition, may make an enterprise think afresh about how to deal with the situation. 2022-23-74 Business Studies. It helps in improving performance. The final reason for understanding business environment relates to whether or not it really makes a difference in the performance of an enterprise. The answer is that it does appear to make a difference. Many studies reveal that the future of an enterprise is closely bound up with what is happening in the environment. And the enterprises that continuously monitor their environment and adopt suitable business practices are the ones which not only improve their present performance but also continue to succeed in the market for a longer period. Dimensions of business environment. Dimensions of, or the factors constituting the business environment, include economic, social, technological, political and legal conditions which are considered relevant for decision-making and improving the performance of an enterprise. In contrast to the specific environment, these factors explain the general environment which mostly influences many enterprises at the same time. However, management of every enterprise can benefit from being aware of these dimensions instead of being disinterested in them. For instance, scientific research has discovered a technology that makes it possible to produce an energy-efficient light bulb that lasts at least 20 times as long as a standard bulb. Senior managers in the lighting divisions at General Electric and Philips recognized that this discovery had the potential to significantly affect their unit growth and profitability, so they have carefully followed the progress on this research and profitably used its findings. A brief discussion of the various factors constituting the general environment of business is given below. Economic environment, interest rates, inflation rates, changes in disposable income of people, stock market indices and the value of rupee are some of the economic factors that can affect management practices in a business enterprise. Short and long-term interest rates significantly affect the demand for product and services. For example, in case of construction companies and automobile manufacturers, low longer-term rates are beneficial because they result in increased spending by consumers for buying homes and cars on borrowed money. Similarly, a rise in the disposable income of people due to increase in the gross domestic product of a country creates increasing demand for products. High inflation rates generally result in constraints on business enterprises as they increase. 2022-23 Business Environment 75. The various costs of business, such as the purchase of raw materials or machinery and payment of wages and salaries to employees. Social environment. The social environment of business include the social forces like customs and traditions, values, social. Business environment. Economic environment. Social environment. Legal environment. Technological environment. Political environment. Dimensions of business environment. An existing structure of the economy in terms of relative role of private and public sectors. And the rates of growth of GNP and per capita income at current and constant prices, and rates of saving and investment and volume of imports and exports of different items and balance of payments and changes in foreign exchange reserves and agricultural and industrial production trends and expansion of transportation and communication facilities and money supply in the economy and public debt, internal and external, and planned outlay in private and public sectors. Components of economic environment. 2022-23-76 Business Studies. Innovations which provide new ways of producing goods and services and new methods and techniques of operating a business. For XMPLE, recent technological advances in computers and electronics have modified the ways in which companies advertise their products. It is common now to see computerized information kiosks and World Wide Web multimedia pages highlighting the virtues of products. Similarly, retailers have direct links with suppliers who replenish stocks when needed. Manufacturers have flexible manufacturing systems. Airline companies have internet and World Wide Web pages where customers can look for flight times, destinations and fares and book their tickets online. In addition, continuing innovations in different scientific and engineering fields such as lasers, robotics, biotechnology, food preservatives, medicine, telecommunication and synthetic fuels have provided numerous opportunities and threats for many different enterprises. Shifts in demand from vacuum tubes to transistors, from steam locomotives to die-cylinder electric engines, from fountain pens to ballpoint, from propeller airplanes to jets, and from typewriters to computer-based word processors. Trends, society's expectations from business, etc. Traditions define social practices that have lasted for decades or even centuries. For example, the celebration of Diwali, Eid, Christmas, and Guru Parv in India provides significant financial opportunities for greetings card companies, sweets or confectionery manufacturers, tailoring outlets and many other related business. Values refer to concepts that a society holds in high esteem. In India, individual freedom, social justice, equality of opportunity and national integration are examples of major values cherished by all of us. In business terms, these values translate into freedom of choice in the market, business's responsibility towards the society and non-discriminatory employment practices. Social trends present various opportunities and threats to business enterprises. For example, the health and fitness trend has become popular among large number of urban dwellers. This has created a demand for products like organic food, gyms, bottled mineral water and food supplements. Technological environment. Technological environment includes forces relating to scientific improvements in 2022-23 Business Environment 77. And attitudes towards product innovations, lifestyles, occupational distribution and consumer preferences and concern with quality of life and life expectancy and expectations from the workforce and shifts in the presence of women in the workforce and birth and death rates and population shifts and educational system and literacy rates and consumption habits and composition of family. Major elements of social environment have all been responsible in creating new business. Political environment. Political environment includes political conditions such as general stability and peace in the country and specific attitudes that elected government representatives hold towards business. The significance of political conditions in business success lies in the predictability of business activities under stable political conditions. On the other hand, there may be uncertainty of business activities due to political unrest and threats to law and order. Political stability, thus, builds up confidence among business people to invest in the long-term projects for the growth of the economy. Political instability can shake that confidence. Similarly, the attitudes of government officials towards business may have either positive or negative impact upon business. Weak legal environment. Legal environment includes various legislations passed by the government, administrative orders issued by government authorities, court judgments as well as the decisions rendered by various commissions and agencies at every level of the government, center, state or local. It is imperative for the management of every enterprise to obey the law. 2022-23-78 Business Studies. Fashion industry shifts towards formal wear. Food habits shift towards packed food. Electronic gadgets increase in demand of these gadgets. Cosmetic industry increase in demand. Activity to social environment. Contact any 10 families known to you. Find out the changes in their consumption habits over the last 5 years. Analyze the impact of these changes on the working of business enterprises. Impact of shifts with the presence of women in the workforce. 2022-23 Business Environment 79. Because of technological advancement, it has become possible to book railway tickets through internet from home, office etc. Indian Railway Catering and Tourism Corporation Limited. A Government of India enterprise. A ticket booking on this website, a guide and register as an individual. Registration is free. And log in by entering your username and password. And the Plan My Travel and Book Tickets page appears. And use Help option for any help required to book tickets. And fill in the details by following the guidelines given below. 2022-2380 Business Studies of the land. Therefore, an adequate knowledge of rules and regulations framed by the government is a prerequisite for better business performance. Non-compliance of laws can land the business enterprise into legal problems. In India, constitutional provisions. Companies Act 2013. Industries Development and Regulations Act 1951. Foreign Exchange Management Act and the Imports and Exports Control Act 1947. Factories Act 1948. Trade Union Act 1926. Workmen's Compensation Act 1923. Industrial Disputes Act 1947, Consumer Protection Act 1986, Competition Act 2002 and host of such other legal enactments is amended from time to time by the Parliament, is important for doing business. Impact of legal environment can be illustrated with the help of government regulations to protect consumers' interests. For example, the advertisement of alcoholic beverages is prohibited. Advertisements, including packets of cigarettes, carry the statutory warning, "Cigarette smoking is injurious to health." Similarly, advertisements of baby food must necessarily inform the potential buyer that mother's milk is the best. All these regulations are required to be followed by advertisers. And prevailing political system and the degree of politicization of business and economic issues and dominant ideologies and values of major political parties and the nature and profile of political leadership and thinking of political personalities and the level of political morality and political institutions like the government and allied agencies and political ideology and practices of the ruling party and the extent and nature of government intervention in business and the nature of relationship of our country with foreign countries. Major elements of the political environment. 2022-23 Business Environment 81. Economic environment in India. The economic environment in India consists of various macro-level factors related to the means of production and distribution of wealth which have an impact on business and industry. These include a. Stage of economic development of the country. b. The economic structure in the form of mixed economy which recognizes the role of both public and private sectors. C. Economic policies of the government, including industrial, monetary and fiscal policies. D. Economic planning, including 5-year plans, annual budgets, and so on. A. Economic indices, like national income, distribution of income, rate and growth of GNP, per capita income, disposable personal income, rate of savings and investments, value of exports and imports, balance of payments, and so on. F. Infrastructural factors, such as financial institutions, banks, modes of transportation, communication facilities, and so on. Business enterprises in India do realize the importance and impact of the economic environment on their working. Almost all annual company reports presented by their chairpersons devote considerable attention to the general economic environment prevailing in the country and an assessment of its impact on their companies. The economic environment of business in India has been steadily changing mainly due to the government policies. At the time of independence, a. The Indian economy was mainly agricultural and rural in character. b. About 70% of the working population was employed in agriculture. C. About 85% of the population was living in the villages. D. Production was carried out using irrational, low productivity technology. A. Communicable diseases were widespread, mortality rates were high. These was no good public health system. In order to solve economic problems of our country, the government took several steps including control by the state of certain industries, central planning and reduced importance of the private sector. The main objectives of India's development plans were a. Initiate rapid economic growth to raise the standard of living, reduce unemployment and poverty. b. Become self-reliant and set up a strong industrial base with emphasis on heavy and basic industries. c. Reduce inequalities of income and wealth. 2022-2382 Business Studies. D. Adopt a socialist pattern of development, based on equality and prevent exploitation of man by man. In accordance with the economic planning, the government gave a lead role to the public sector for infrastructure industries whereas the private sector was broadly given the responsibility of developing consumer goods industry. At the same time, the government imposed several restrictions, regulations and controls on the working of private sector enterprises. India's experience with economic planning has delivered mixed results. In 1991, the economy faced a serious foreign exchange crisis, high government deficit and a rising trend of prices despite bumper crops. As a part of economic reforms, the Government of India announced a new industrial policy in July 1991. The broad features of this policy were as follows. A. The government reduced the number of industries under compulsory licensing to 6. B. Many of the industries reserved for the public sector under the earlier policy were reserved. The role of the public sector was limited only to 4 industries of strategic importance. C. Disinvestment was carried out in case of many public sector industrial enterprises. D. Policy towards foreign capital was liberalized. The share of foreign equity participation was increased and in many activities 100% foreign direct investment (FDI) was permitted. A. Automatic permission was now granted for technology agreements with foreign companies. F. Foreign Investment Promotion Board (FIPB) was set up to promote and channelize foreign investment in India. Appropriate measures were taken to remove obstacles in the way of growth and expansion of industrial units of large industrial houses. Small-scale sector was assured all help and accorded due recognition. In essence, this policy has sought to liberate industry from the shackles of the licensing system. Liberalization drastically reduced the role of the public sector privatization and encouraged foreign private participation in India's industrial development. Globalization. Liberalization. The economic reforms that were introduced were aimed at liberalizing the Indian business and industry from all unnecessary controls and restrictions. They signaled the end of the license permit quota Raj. Liberalization of the Indian industry has taken place with respect to I. Abolishing licensing requirement in most of the industries except a short list. E. Freedom in deciding the scale of business activities, i.e., no restrictions on expansion or contraction of business activities. E. Removal of restrictions on the movement of goods and services, i.e. freedom in fixing the prices of goods services. 2022-23 Business Environment 83. Major elements of the crisis situation which led the Government of India to announce economic reform were a serious fiscal crisis in which the fiscal deficit reached the level of 6.6% of GDP in 1990-91. And heavy internal debt which rose to about 50% of GDP with interest payments draining about 39% of total revenue collections of the central government. And low GNP growth rate which fell to 1.4% from the peak level of 10.5% in 1988-89 at 1980-81 prices. And low overall agricultural production, food grain production and industrial production showed negative growth rates of -2.8%, -5.3% and -0.1% respectively. And soaring inflation rate based both on wholesale price index and consumer price index for industrial workers at 13 to 14%. And shrinkage of foreign trade, imports in dollar terms fell by 19.4% and exports by 1.5%. And depreciation of rupee by 26.7% vis-a-vis US dollars. And fall of foreign exchange reserves to such a low level that they were barely adequate to meet the import requirements of a few weeks. Non-resident Indians (NRIs) were withdrawing their deposits at an alarmingly high rate. And the confidence of the international financial institutions was badly shaken and in just over a year its creditworthiness rating fell from AAA to BB+ put on credit watch. And the country was on the verge of defaulting on international financial obligations and the situation warranted immediate policy action to save the situation. In May 1991, the government had to lease 20 tons of gold out of its stock to the State Bank of India to enable it to sell the gold with repurchase option after 6 months. In addition, Reserve Bank of India was allowed to pledge 47 tons of gold to the Bank of England to raise a loan of $600 million. Crisis of June 1991. Weak reduction in tax rates and lifting of unnecessary controls over the economy, weak simplifying procedures for imports and exports, and weak making it easier to attract foreign capital and technology to India. Privatization, the new set of economic reforms aimed at giving greater role to the private sector in the nation-building process and a reduced role to the public sector. This was a reversal of the development strategy pursued so far by Indian planners. To achieve this, the government redefined the 2022-2384 Business Studies. Role of the public sector in the new industrial policy of 1991, adopted the policy of planned disinvestments of the public sector and decided to refer the loss-making and sick enterprises to the Board of Industrial and Financial Reconstruction. The term disinvestments used here means transfer in the public sector enterprises to the private sector. It results in dilution of stake of the government in the public enterprise. If there is dilution of government ownership beyond 51%, it would result in transfer of ownership in management of the enterprise to the private sector. Globalization. Globalization means the integration of the various economies of the world leading towards the emergence of a cohesive global economy. Till 1991, the Government of India had followed a policy of strictly regulating imports in value and volume terms. These regulations were with respect to a. licensing of imports, b. tariff restrictions and c. quantitative restrictions. The new economic reforms aimed at trade liberalization were directed towards import liberalization, export promotion through rationalization of the tariff structure and reforms with respect to foreign exchange so that the country does not remain isolated from the rest of the world. Globalization involves an increased level of interaction and interdependence among the various nations of the global economy. Physical geographical gap or political boundaries no longer remain barriers for a business enterprise to serve a customer in a distant geographical market. This has been made possible by the rapid advancement in technology and liberal trade policies by governments. Through the policy of 1991, the Government of India moved the country to this globalization pattern. Activity 3 Globalization. Make a list of 5 Indian companies which have global operations today. Find out the major products they sell in the countries where they operate. A truly global economy implies a boundaryless world where there is free flow of goods and services across nations. Free flow of capital across nations. Free flow of information and technology. Free movement of people across borders. A common acceptable mechanism for the settlement of disputes. A global governance perspective. A truly globalized economy. 2022-23 Business Environment 85. Some of the early major steps taken to manage the economic crisis were the following: fiscal correction aimed at reducing fiscal deficit by about Rs. 7,700 crore in 1991-92 compared to 1990-91. An announcement of new industry policy in July 1991 seeking to deregulate the industry with the objective of promoting the growth of a more competitive and efficient industrial economy. An abolition of industrial licensing for all industrial projects except 18 industries of high strategic and environmental importance and with high import content. About 80% of the industries were delicensed. An amendment of the MRTP Act to eliminate the need for prior approval of the central government by large companies for capacity expansion, diversification and merger and amalgamation. 9 areas in basic and core industries earlier reserved for the public sector were opened to the private sector. Limit of foreign equity holding raised from 40% to 51% in a wide range of priority industries. Foreign Investment Promotion Board (FIPB) established to negotiate proposals from large international firms and expedite clearances of the investment proposals. Rupee devaluation by 18% during July 1-3, 1991 supported by a standby credit of $2.3 billion from the IMF over a 20 months period negotiated in October 1991. Negotiation of $500 million structural adjustment loan from the World Bank in April 1992 and a loan totaling SDR 1.3 billion from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) between January-September 1991. Introduction of India Development Bond Scheme and Immunity Scheme for repatriation of funds held abroad in October 1991, under which more than $2 billion were mobilized during 1991-92. Bringing back of gold earlier pledged to the Bank of England and the Bank of Japan. Continuance of the measures of import control and credit squeeze. Administered licensing of imports replaced by freely tradable import entitlements called EXIM scripts linked to export earnings. The measure was expected to introduce self-balancing mechanism in India's foreign trade. An introduction of liberalized exchange rate management system (LERMS), under which a dual exchange rate system was established, one rate being effectively floated in the market. And an import licensing in most capital goods, raw materials, intermediates and components eliminated. Advanced licensing system considerably simplified. The initial series of measures set the tone for the future economic reforms. Any of the measures taken above was continued to form a part of the ongoing reform process. Early crisis met, reform measures. 2022-2386 Business Studies. Demonetization. The Government of India made an announcement on November 8, 2016 with profound implications for the Indian economy. The two largest denomination notes, $500, $1000, were demonetized with immediate effect, ceasing to be legal tender except for a few specified purposes such as paying utility bills. This led to 86% of the money in circulation invalid. The people of India had to deposit the invalid currency in the banks, which came along with the restrictions placed on cash withdrawals. In other words, restrictions were placed on the convertibility of domestic money and bank deposits. The aim of demonetization was to curb corruption, counterfeiting, the use of high denomination notes for illegal activities, and especially the accumulation of black money generated by income that has not been declared to the tax authorities. Features 1. Demonetization is viewed as a tax administration measure. Cash holdings arising from declared income was readily deposited in banks and exchanged for new notes. But those with black money had to declare their unaccounted wealth and pay taxes at a penalty rate. 2. Demonetization is also interpreted as a shift on the part of the government, indicating that tax evasion will no longer be tolerated or accepted. 3. Demonetization also led to tax administration channelizing savings into the formal financial system. Though much of the cash that has been deposited in the banking system is bound to be withdrawn, but some of the new deposit schemes offered by the banks will continue to provide a base loans at lower interest rates. 4. Another feature of demonetization is to create a less cash or cash-light economy, i.e., channeling more savings through the formal financial system and improving tax compliance. Though there are arguments against this, as digital transactions require use of cell phones for customers and point-of-sale POS machines for merchants, which will only work if there is internet connectivity. On the contrary, these disadvantages are counterbalanced by an understanding that it helps people into the formal economy. Digitalization has broadly impacted three sections of society: the poor, who are largely outside the digital economy; the less, largely outside the digital economy; the less affluent, who are becoming part of the digital economy, who have been covered under Jan Dhan accounts and RuPay cards; and the affluent, who are fully conversant with digital transactions. 2022-23 Business Environment 87. Thereby increasing financial saving and reducing tax evasion. Impact of government policy changes on business and industry. The policy of liberalization, privatization and globalization of the government has made a significant impact on the working of enterprises in business and industry. The Indian corporate sector has come face to face with several challenges due to government policy changes. These challenges can be explained as follows: increasing competition. As a result of changes in the rules of industrial licensing and entry of foreign firms, competition for Indian firms has increased, especially in service industries like telecommunications, airlines, banking, insurance, etc., which were earlier in the public sector. More demanding customers. Customers today have become more demanding because they are well informed. Increased competition in the market gives the customers wider choice in purchasing better quality of goods and services. Rapidly changing technological environment. Increased competition forces the firms to develop new ways to survive and grow in the market. New technologies make it possible to improve machines, process, products and services. The rapidly changing technological environment creates tough challenges before smaller firms. Weak necessity for change. In a regulated environment of pre-1991 era, the firms could have relatively stable policies and practices. After 1991, the market forces have become turbulent, as a result of which the enterprises have to continuously modify their operations. Impact of demonetization 1. Money interest rates. I. Decline in cash transactions. E. Bank deposits increased. E. Increase in financial savings. 2. Private wealth declined since some high demonetized notes were not returned. And real estate prices fell. 3. Public sector wealth. No effect. 4. Digitization. Digital transactions amongst new users through Pay AEPS increased. 5. Real estate prices declined. 6. Tax collection. Rise in income tax collection because of increased disclosure. Adapted from Economic Survey, 2016-17. 2022-2388 Business Studies. Meaning of business environment. The term business environment means the totality of all individuals, institutions and other forces that are outside a business but that potentially affect its performance. Business environment can be characterized in terms of a totality of external forces, b. specific and general forces, c. interrelatedness, d. dynamic nature, a. uncertainty. Summary. Weak need for developing human resource. Indian enterprises have suffered for long with inadequately trained personnel. The new market conditions require people with higher competence and greater commitment. Hence the need for developing human resources. Weak market orientation. Earlier firms used to produce first and go to the market for sale later. In other words, they had production-oriented marketing operations. In a fast-changing world, there is a shift to market orientation in as much as the firms have to study and analyze the market first and produce goods accordingly. Weak loss of budgetary support to the public sector. The central government's budgetary support for financing the public sector outlays has declined over the years. The public sector and the takings have realized that, in order to survive and grow, they will have to be more efficient and generate their own resources for the purpose. On the whole, the impact of government policy changes, particularly in respect of liberalization, privatization and globalization, has been positive as the Indian business and industry has shown great resilience in dealing with the new economic order. Indian enterprises have developed strategies and adopted business processes and procedures to meet the challenge of competition. They have become more customer-focused and adopted measures to improve customer relationship and satisfaction. Key terms: business environment, opportunities, threats, economic environment, political environment, social environment, technological environment, legal environment, liberalization, privatization, globalization. 2022-23 Business Environment 89. F. Complexity. G. Relativity. Importance of business environment. Business environment and its understanding are important for I. Enabling the identification of opportunities and getting the first mover advantage. E. Helping in the identification of threats and early warning signals. E. Coping with the rapid changes. V. Assisting in planning and policy, and V. Improving the performance. Elements of business environment. Business environment consists of 5 important dimensions including economic, social, technological, political and legal. Economic environment includes such factors as interest rates, inflation rates, changes in disposable income of people, stock market indexes and the value of rupee. Social environment includes social forces like traditions, values, social trends, society's expectations of business, and so on. Technological environment includes forces relating to scientific improvements and innovations which provide new ways of producing goods and services and new methods and techniques of operating a business. Political environment includes political conditions such as general stability and peace in the country and specific attitudes that elected government representatives hold toward business. Legal environment includes various legislations passed by the government, administrative orders issued by government authorities, court judgments as well as decisions rendered by various commissions and agencies at every level of the government, center, state or local. Economic environment in India. The economic environment in India consists of various macro-level factors related to the means of production and distribution of wealth which have an impact on business and industry. The economic environment of business in India has been steadily changing since independence, mainly due to government policies. In order to solve economic problems of our country at the time of independence, the government took several steps including control by the state of key industries, central planning and reduced importance of the private sector. These steps delivered mixed results until 1991 when Indian economy happened to face serious foreign exchange crisis, high government deficit and a rising trend of prices despite bumper crops. 2022-2390 Business Studies. Very short answer type. 1. What is meant by business environment? 2. How does understanding of business environment help in improving performance of a business? 3. Give an example to show that a business firm operates within numerous interrelated factors constituting the business environment. Hint. Example highlighting the interrelatedness of dimensions of business environment. 4. Krishna Furnishes Mart started its operations in the year 1954 and emerged as the market leader in the industry because of their original designs and efficiency in operations. They had a steady demand for their products, but over the years, they found their market share declining because of new entrants in the field. The firm decided to review their operations and decided that in order to meet the competition, they need to study and analyze the market trends and then design and develop their products accordingly. List any 2 exercises. Liberalization, privatization and globalization. As a part of economic reforms, the Government of India announced a new industrial policy in July 1991 which sought to liberate the industry from the shackles of the licensing system. Liberalization drastically reduced the role of the public sector privatization and encouraged foreign private participation in industrial development. Globalization. Impact of government policy changes on business and industry. The government policy of liberalization, privatization and globalization has made a definite impact on the working of enterprises in business and industry in terms of a. Increasing competition, b. More demanding customers, c. Rapidly changing technological environment, d. Necessity for change, a. Need for developing human resource, f. Market orientation, g. Loss of budgetary support to the public sector. In the new economic environment, the Indian enterprises have developed various strategies to meet the challenge of competition. 2022-23 Business Environment 91. Impacts of changes in business environment on Krishna Furnishes Mart's operations. Hint. Increase in competition and market orientation. 5. Name any 2 specific forces of business environment affecting business. Short answer type. 1. Why it is important for business enterprises to understand their environment. Explain. 2. Explain the following terms. A. Liberalization, b. Privatization, c. Globalization. 3. Briefly discuss the impact of government policy changes on business and industry. 4. National Digital Library of India (NDL India) is a pilot project initiated by the HRD Ministry. It works towards developing a framework of virtual repository of learning resources with a single window search facility. It provides support to all academic levels including researchers, lifelong learners and differently abled learners free of cost. State the dimensions of business environment highlighted above. 5. State the impact of demonetization on interest rates, private wealth and real estate. Long answer type. 1. How would you characterize business environment? Explain with examples the difference between general and specific environment. 2. How would you argue that the success of a business enterprise is significantly influenced by its environment? 3. Explain, with examples, the various dimensions of business environment. 4. The Government of India announced demonetization of $500 and $1,000 currency notes with effect from the midnight of November 8, 2016. As a result, the existing $500 and $1,000 currency notes ceased to be legal tender from that date. New currency notes of the denomination of $500 and $2,000 were issued by Reserve Bank of India after the announcement. 2022-2392 Business Studies. This step resulted in a substantial increase in the awareness about and use of point-of-sale machines, e-wallets, digital cash and other modes of cashless transactions. Also, increased transparency in monetary transactions and disclosure led to a rise in government revenue in the form of tax collection. A. Enumerate the dimensions of business environment highlighted above. B. State the features of demonetization. 5. What economic changes were initiated by the government under the Industrial Policy, 1991? What impact have these changes made on business and industry? 6. What are the essential features of A. Liberalization, B. Privatization and C. Globalization? 2022-23.